Let's now bring you our first feature on the show today. Now, the significance of the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises for growth, productivity and competitiveness of economies of developing countries is universally recognized. Now, not only do they provide employment and income for the bulk of the population, as well as the primary source of new jobs, they have also been acknowledged as critical breeding and nurturing grounds for domestic entrepreneurial capacities, technical skills, technological innovativeness, and managerial competences for private sector development. Now, the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, that's SMEDEN, in its continued effort to reposition and improve the nation's MSME sector, unveiled the newly approved revised national policy on micro, small and medium-sized enterprises with the aim of addressing the challenges of financial access to create, operate and even expand viable MSMEs in the country. According to the Director General of SMEDEN, Dr. Umaru Diko Rada, some of the changes include the macroeconomic policy thrust embedded in the medium-term expenditure framework and the fiscal strategy paper, the National Economic Growth and Recovery Program, that's the ERGP 2017 to 2020, introduced to pull Nigeria out of recession. We also had the enactment of the Finance Act 2020 with some explicit provisions targeted at MSMEs and the coming into effect of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Joining me now live from our Abuja studio to shed more light on this new development, and I have with me Executive Director, Planning, Research, Monitoring and Evaluation of the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, Mr. Olawale Fasonya. Good to have you on the show this afternoon. Okay, now, Mr. Fasonya, let's start like this. Now, to what extent do you see the revised policy on MSME incorporate other various government policies related to interventions towards the MSME sector, such as the medium-term expenditure and fiscal framework of 2019 to 2021? We have the likes of the Finance Act 2020 and others.
The audio is...
Okay, Mr. Fasonya, can you hear me clearly now?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Now, let's talk about the intricacies of the revised policy on MSME. How does this also incorporate other various government policies related to the MSME sector, such as the medium-term expenditure and fiscal framework paper? We have also had the Finance Act and other interventions. How does this also key into this revision?
Thank you very much. Yes, actually, the fact that the policy was released recently is because we had to incorporate a number of these other policies of government. And in coming up with the new definition of SMEs, we actually took into consideration the MTF, the Finance Act that you just mentioned. For example, in the Finance Act, you will see that the emphasis is on turnover, even in terms of tax evaluation and all that. And so these are part of the considerations we took into consideration before we came up with the final review.
And now let's talk about real economic terms. Let's paint a clearer picture. How would this policy also facilitate the transition of MSMEs, as we know them as small-sized enterprises, medium-sized enterprises, now into the big leagues of large corporates, large enterprises?
Well, hello?
I can hear you clearly. Please go on.
I lost the last statement.
Okay, now I'm talking about the way this policy would also enhance the competitiveness of MSMEs and also help in the transition process, because every MSME definitely has to go through that process from the small stage to the medium-sized enterprise and then now go big in terms of playing big as much as big corporates or big entities.
Okay, thank you very much. In the first instance, the vision of this reviewed policy is to do a policy that will create an MSME ecosystem that will ensure sustainability and global competitiveness. So this is the basic idea behind the review. And we have taken into consideration all factors that will make SMEs compete globally. You know, there is a lot of roadmap in the policy that will assist us in enhancing the capacity of our MSMEs. And again, the idea is not really for every SME to become large. Some SMEs will remain medium, some will remain small. But the idea is if you increase their competitiveness in all ramifications, then it will be easy for them to just seamlessly move from being medium to large. And if you look at the new category of SMEs, a medium business is already having a turnover of about 1 billion. So most medium businesses are actually seen as large in Nigeria. But by the time you convert into foreign exchange, that's when you know that they are still small businesses, not necessarily large. So, but in summary, the policy has taken into consideration this, and we have an implementation matrix that will ensure that we take SMEs from the level they are now to the next level. Another issue I need to mention here is that given the survey we had with the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, over 90% of what we call MSMEs are largely micro, and over 90% of those micro are informal. So our primary aim is to see how many of the informal ones will be able to move to formality with this new the reviewed national policy. Thank you.
And then talking about the informal sector now, we also have to look at the employment base that we have, this engine of growth, because when you look at the size of MSMEs and the contribution to GDP, it's quite large. To what extent did data collection also inform this policy? Because at the end of the day, some would say if you're not having proper data collection, then your interventions would not necessarily be strategic to attend to the needs of the sector.
Actually, this is the basic reason why we now have to change the classification of MSMEs. So instead of calling everybody micro, we now have nano enterprises. These are mom and pop enterprises that we have all around us. There is no household or within 2 or 3 households you see somebody selling things across the road, or you have people selling groundnut on the streets. So we have been able to now segregate those categories from the proper micro business that is formal. So we have mom and pop businesses now called nano enterprises, employing just 1 or 2 people. In fact, in most cases, they are just 1 person and they are largely informal. So this policy has taken this into consideration, and a lot of programs are coming on board that will move them from informality to formal. So this is well taken care of.
And also having foresight is quite critical as well, for the fact that we also have to look towards emergent sectors of the economy. We are working in a global space, and then we have technology also take center stage. Evolution is fast-paced at this point in time. Does this policy also address new sectors of the economy that are springing up? Take, for example, ICT and much more. Even the agricultural sector, now the conversation is now going towards mechanized farming and a whole lot more. It's not business as usual or just the traditional base.
Thank you very much. This policy has taken this into consideration, and that is why we now have new priority sectors. And in the new priority sectors that we're going to pay attention to in the implementation, all these categories that you mentioned, we are looking at agricultural sector, we are looking at ICT, we are looking at real estate, we are looking at culture, we are looking at the new, all these people that are going into music, young people that are, so it's all embracing. We have about 9 priority sectors in all And the implementation matrix has been designed in a way to address each of these sectors. So they've all been taken into consideration.
And now also talking about the categorization of the MSMEs as well, it's one thing to work in silos and it's another to work in clusters, and then the bigger picture is to have hubs where we share resources. Now this classification as well, does that also take into bear the need to look into creating hubs that would also help share resources? Because now that we are considering a bounce back in terms of economic recovery, we have to cut the cost of production and much more. How does this also attend to the need of managing resources, sharing resources, and cutting costs?
I didn't quite get that.
Now, I'm talking about helping MSMEs to survive at this point in time as we're looking at a recovery gradually. Now, to what extent do you think MSMEs also have to work as hubs, not necessarily in silos? Because it's one thing to help individual units, it's another to help in clusters or in hubs.
Well, there is a whole chapter in the policy that is dedicated to creating MSME clusters. We are looking at existing clusters. How can we assist them to improve on their modes of operations? How can they come together to use common facilities?
Exactly.
And we are looking at creating new clusters. Already we have designated about 23 industrial development centers for innovation so that they can be world-class clusters. Currently, the one at Idu in Abuja is being turned into a furniture cluster because we know a lot of furniture companies are springing up and there is enough market for them in Abuja. The other IDCs have also been designated. So these are some areas that we are looking at. We are looking at approaching people in the diaspora to invest in having cluster parks. We are also looking into getting state governments to designate specific areas as cluster parks where people can come and produce, and so that they can source raw materials together, they can source markets, and people in the same value chain of businesses will also be able to work together so that one will dovetail. So it's an area that is well recognized and work has started in this area. And when you look at the implementation matrix, we have brought together a number of other agencies that the SMEDA will work with to make sure that this is a reality in the not too distant future.
And as the Executive Director of Planning and Research as well, monitoring the role of research, value addition is key to also upping the ante, if we may put things simply, for MSMEs. Now, what's your word as well to MSMEs at this point in time? Well, we're looking at conversations around the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We're looking at having much more access to funds. We're looking to aggressively push the MSMEs to the front base where they actually are supposed to fill in. What's your word towards value addition? Let us just do better with our level of standards. What's your word there?
You come again?
What's your word in terms of value addition? Value addition for our MSMEs at this point in time when we have conversations around the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and much more. How critical is value addition for the MSME space?
No, it has always been very critical. And that is why we skewed most of our programs towards value addition. We embrace everybody, but we do more with SMEs that add value because we have a lot of raw materials in abundance. And what we have been preaching with the MSMEs is to add a little value, even if you are going to go into exports. And we even have a large market in Nigeria. So the issue of value addition, it's prime. And we know this, and that is why we have been assisting a lot of fabricators within Nigeria to be able to produce machines that will meet the local demands for value addition. The agency has a program called One Local Government, One Product. This particular program identifies local fabricators. We look at what they need to make them produce well. We look at people that are already in business that can come together and use common facilities. So these are a number of programs that we are putting on board to address this kind of a situation. And in addition to that, we recognize the fact that funding is one of the problems that a number of our MSMEs are having. So we are already talking with other banks. Already we are working with the Bank of Agric, because we know over 90% of our people are agrarian and a lot of them are farmers. So we have a program with Bank of Agric where we match funds for MSMEs to access, so that value addition will not be too difficult for them. We're also working with the Bank of Industry and a number of microfinance banks too, to have special windows for MSMEs. And in this new policy, there is a deliberate attempt to now harmonize all programs of government that is aimed at enhancing finance for MSMEs. We're also talking with the CBN so that we have more friendly MSME funding windows for our MSMEs.
And talking about windows for success, now let's talk about the success rate you've also recorded in terms of the SME Digital Academy set up by SMEDEN as well. Talk us through the success rates you've had so far and how this is also transforming the agenda to do more.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you asked this question, because since the pandemic started, it's been very difficult for us to bring people together for training. So the pandemic has taught us to do things in a different way. So one of the areas that SMEDEN now engage in training people is this digital academy. We are partnering with an organization called Safita Limited to deploy digital training. And the success has been enormous. I can tell you that between December last year that we launched the program and now, almost 2,000 people have registered on the platform. And as we are talking now, over 700 have started training. Just recently, in the past 2 weeks, we graduated the first set of trainees. And you will be surprised that even in the rural areas, because the training is deployed in Hausa already, Yoruba and Igbo is coming on board. I think between now and the end of the month, trainings will start in those local languages. So it's so easy that even where people don't have access to internet, they use their phone while they are working, while they're in their farm, they can get on their phone and get trained. So it is something that we're highly delighted about. In fact, in some villages, we have the video where people come together and somebody will put the phone down and about 3, 4, 5 people will listen to training programs. And then the beauty of the Digital Academy is that it's not only SMEDEN that is the faculty that gives training or the organization we are partnering. If you are working with TVC, if you have a curriculum that can help SMEs to market their program online, you can bring the curriculum, we look at it, and then we get you on board. So it's something that we are paying full attention to, and we are encouraging a lot of people to go online and get trained. And it's not something that is limited to time. If you are free, if it is 10 p.m. that you are free, you can attend the course on the digital platform.
Well, we just have to continue to think outside of the box. We expect our MSMEs to also take center stage in terms of the bounce back of the Nigerian economy. We are the giant of Africa. There's the population there, so it's for us to just make good of the demand and supply pool that we have in country. And definitely SMEDEN has also put in certain interventions. We just hope that the volume, the population and the engagement would be increased. Thank you very much for your time on the show today so far, Mr. Lawale Fasanya. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure too.
Good afternoon. Well, this is where we end the first conversation for today. We'll